So how does one follow up on a video covering what might be one of the most light-hearted, wholesome, family-friendly games ever made? Al-Qaeda. Postal 2. Jesus Christ, this game. I'll be honest, I'm not sure my channel is safe with me making this video. It is one of the most crude, vile, shocking, unapologetically horrendous games ever made. There is no limit to its tastelessness, no lines it isn't willing to cross. It's been the subject of controversy since its release and has even been outright banned in a few places. And all from a guy who started off making Sesame Street games, if you would believe it. It's a game that I honestly cannot recommend that anyone right in the head play. With that said, however, I am also not right in the head. I am obsessed with the awfulness this game throws at you, and I thought talking about it would make for some great video material. And when I say that, I mean I was already too far into this script before realizing this video might not be a good idea. So yeah, keep that in mind because what I'm about to throw at you is probably not gonna bode well. So with that, let's begin. To start off, I want to briefly compare Postal 2 to the game that came before it. Now, I'm not really an expert on the first Postal game, but I think I know enough about it to say that you would not guess that the second game is a direct sequel. And I don't just mean that in how one is a first-person shooter and the other's a top-down shooter. I mean how one is supposed to be all dark and depressing and how the other is supposed to be an immature romp. The first Postal game has you play as the Postal Dude, an insane and from what I've heard demon-possessed madman going on a violent rampage. The people you shoot down are less an evil opposing threat and more so cops and vigilantes trying to put a stop to a maniac. As you massacre everyone in each level, you're treated not with victory screens but demonic visions that eat at your psyche, pushing you even further down this road of death. The game ends with the Postal Dude trapped in a hellish prison left to decay. It's a game where you are not the hero. You are just a man who's been pushed past his breaking point. A man beyond saving. It's not uplifting, it's not empowering, and it's perhaps the darkest video game ever made. Now, Postal 2 is a straight-up comedy game. You have talking ballsack mascots, cats you can spit roast on your gun, ethnic stereotypes, and even a fully dedicated piss mechanic. Granted, this is not highbrow comedy. In fact, the humor here would probably offend more people than it actually pleases. But either way, it is clearly not trying to be the weep fest that came before it. Postal Dude this time around is less a crazed maniac and more just a repulsive dick. Like if Duke Nukem was a complete loser. He doesn't kill anyone because of some psychotic rampage, he just attacks anyone who gets in his way. The only thing you could say that carries over from the last game is the violence, which is amplified tenfold here. Which reminds me, Postal 2 might be the most needlessly violent game ever made. This isn't just pointing and shooting at people, you're chopping them up, you're setting them on fire, there are weapons stashed around pretty much every nook and cranny, and this whole town is just filled to the brim with nutjobs who want nothing but to kill you for crossing their paths. It is an unhinged nightmare that's made even more ridiculous when you consider that all you're supposed to do in this game is run errands. Yeah, that's the story of Postal 2. You're just going from place to place each day of the week getting some mundane tasks done. Tasks like going to the store, returning a library book, buying car parts, confessing your sins, getting Gary Coleman's autograph, delivering a birthday present to your cult leader uncle. Okay, maybe it's not that mundane. And none of it requires that you raise your weapon ever. You see, this is what I mean when I say needlessly violent. It's needless in that you don't need to be violent. Kind of, I'll explain later. You will be caught in the crossfire from time to time, but even then, you always have the option to just run away before things get out of hand. I mean, I suppose if you're playing on a harder difficulty, it might be better to fight back so people aren't just insta-killing you as you walk around, but I don't think that oversight really ruins the intent. This has to be one of the strangest game design choices I've ever seen. Give me all of these deadly objects to find and pick up and have none of them be necessary for completing the game. It's like a statement or something, as if this isn't a violent game at all, it's just the players who are bloodthirsty. Now here's the real question. Am I one of those bloodthirsty players? Am I always out for carnage, or do I ever decide to just put the weapon down and go about my day? I'm out for carnage. Like seriously, you're going to leave all these deadly objects lying everywhere and not expect me to use them? I mean, everyone in this town is a complete asshole. You're just making it easier for me to get back at them all. Speaking of which, the selection of weapons in this game is just off the walls ridiculous. Of course you have your typical stuff like handguns and whatnot, but then you have stuff like diseased cow heads, toy ballsack grenades, not showing that on YouTube, and even cursed copies of Gary Coleman's autobiography. While I'm on the topic of the weapons though, I do have to complain about how you switch between them. The weapon select in this game is this long row of unlabeled columns that if you're using your mouse wheel, you have to scroll through one weapon at a time. Now this isn't a huge issue early on in the game when you haven't picked a lot up yet, but when your arsenal starts looking like this, you will be caught in endless fire trying to navigate it as your health slowly drops. I mean, if the game slowed down or even paused while you had it up, I wouldn't be so frustrated, but as is, it really brings the combat down at certain points. In all fairness though, it really doesn't take away from how insane your arsenal can be. There is just so much weird shit to find that you'll want to try it all at least once. Now for those of you who are already familiar with this game, I don't think that any of this is surprising. Just about everybody who I've seen talk about this game is fast to point out the graphic violence, edgelord humor, and the ironic fact that it's all in a game about running errands. Something, however, I have yet to see people mention, that is to say, they probably did, I just didn't bother checking, is that there are a few areas where Postal 2 is either cheap or outright broken, and yet somehow, it really works in this game's favor. Right off the bat, there are the visuals. By God, this is one of the ugliest games I've ever seen in my life. The awful textures, the muddy colors, the stiff animations, the soulless facial expressions, everything about how this game looks makes me want to throw up. As much as I berate these visuals though, they actually fit this game perfectly. This is a polluted, backwater town full of dirty rednecks and hippies. It only makes sense that the game looks kind of shitty to match it. Another thing that somehow ends up working in this game's favor is how brain-dead the AI can be. People are slow to react to you, run into hazards, sometimes have trouble aiming, and might even ignore dead bodies lying right in front of them. The AI is so bad, but even then it adds so much ironic humor to the game and gives off the impression that each of these people are on like meth or something. Something that's also worth mentioning is this funny mechanic that literally relies on the game being broken in some way. You've probably come across this same kind of thing in other games where you get wedged in somewhere and the engine still thinks you're in midair, so it won't just let you jump out. Here, not only does the game know when you get stuck, but then without any rhyme or reason will just teleport you out before giving you a message to stay away. Just about everything that's badly done in this game ends up matching perfectly with its ridiculous, nasty tone. Although I guess while we're on the topic of it, the one broken aspect of this game that I honestly think they should have fixed are the voiceovers. There are these occasional interactions where the postal dude talks to other NPCs and you can barely hear them.
Hi there. Yes.
It's some kind of faded audio issue where you really have to get in close to hear them, which would be fine if half of them weren't stuck behind a desk. Now on the face of it, I guess this isn't really that big of an issue. The story of this game is so bare bones that it doesn't really warrant that much dialogue to begin with. It's not game-breaking per se, but it just kind of bugs me. Little side note while I'm editing this, I'm probably more salty about this than I need to be because I ended up turning off the subtitles after my first recording. They really pick up every single word of dialogue around you and I just thought that didn't look good on screen. So I wanted as little footage that had them as possible. So, yeah, take that as you will. Aside from that though, I cannot think of many games that get leverage out of throwing so much low quality crap at you. Now everything I just talked about so far is all fine and good, but what really stands out to me the most in Postal 2 is probably the world it takes place in, which is weird because at first glance it isn't anything remarkable. I might even say that this game's choice of a rundown dirty town setting makes it something you wouldn't enjoy walking through. It also doesn't help that your way of getting around is pretty tedious. You can't run in this game unless you're holding scissors, and you already know what I had to say about the weapon select. The map too also kind of sucks. On top of the fact that there's like barely anything on it, bringing it up pauses the game. You can't just walk while you look at it. I also did realize recently you could just follow the street sign, so I guess that helps, but it doesn't really make the map itself any better. On the surface, there isn't anything to get excited about within the town of Paradise. But then you start to notice things as you keep playing. Wait a minute, has that road opened up? It wasn't like that a few days ago. Hang on, how deep does this building go? It was just a small shack on the outside. Is that the game developer placed smack dab in the middle of town? Hang on a second, I just found a hidden door that wasn't listed anywhere on the map. I wonder where it goes to. Al-Qaeda's secret underground base. You see, that's the beauty of this game's setting. What appears to be a dingy, washed-up town actually has so much hidden within the cracks. It demands that you explore every inch of it just to see how much weird shit you can find. Now, I don't think I can really make a Postal 2 video without finishing off with the game's 2 expansions. Apocalypse Weekend and Paradise Lost are 2 campaigns following up on the main game's out-of-nowhere Doomsday ending. First up, Apocalypse Weekend. The postal dude wakes up in the hospital to discover the town is facing the end of days, with zombies popping up, experimental tornado cats attacking people, and even a demon coming out of nowhere. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really like Apocalypse Weekend. There are certain changes made here that really go against the more enjoyable aspects of the main game. One of the most drastic changes made is that you no longer have the option not to kill anybody. There are several missions in this expansion where you have a set number of enemies you have to take out. From what I understand, this actually caused some people to hate on this expansion when it came out. And while I know I said I never go the peaceful route in this game, no doubt putting me on a watch list somewhere, I can't help but agree. Although, it has less to do with that player choice being taken away and more to do with the fact that you have a set number of enemies you need to kill. The violence in the main game had this visceral carnage to it, but you never had to indulge in it until everyone around you was dead. You could stop rampaging anytime you wanted. The fact that there's a minimum kill count here just turns it all into a chore. I wouldn't mind too much if the enemies in question were actually interesting to fight, but it's mostly just these super basic zombies, cows that mostly won't fight back, and these rampaging elephants that are super easy to hit. I guess the bosses were okay, but there were only like 2 of them, with both amounting to 5% of the campaign. I think what really ruins Apocalypse Weekend for me though is that the world this time around is super closed off. There's no exploring, there's no branching pathways, there's nowhere to get lost and stumble upon something interesting. You're always either going down one set path or stuck in a barren, confined area. I already gushed over the open world in the main game, so I think you can gather why I don't like this. I guess I could say Apocalypse Weekend has a bit more of a story this time around. Postal Dude now has this overarching goal of finding his lost dog and escaping town, with all of your daily tasks now leading up to those things. Even then though, it doesn't go much deeper than that, and considering how the main game was barely trying to have a cohesive story to begin with, is adding one technically an improvement? Like you're trying to fix something nobody cared about. I guess this expansion also added the cowhead, but other than that, I was not a fan of Apocalypse Weekend. Thankfully, we have the next expansion to look at. Now, to be completely straight with you, Paradise Lost might need its own video, because this is basically its own game. This expansion actually ended up being longer than how I remembered playing it a few years back. Because of this, I don't have enough time to record a full playthrough for this video. To tell you the truth, I'm actually skipping through a lot of it just to get a general sense of what it's like. Again, yes, I did play it a few years back, but my memory there's a bit hazy. I can only say so much about it with that. So please keep that in mind because I'm probably gonna end up glossing over a lot of stuff. Hopefully I'll be able to make it up in the future. So with that, Paradise Lost takes place 11 years after the main game. The postal dude wakes up from a radiation-induced coma to discover the town of Paradise has fallen into complete disorder after being nuked. To make things worse, his dog has disappeared again, and now he must venture back in to find him. Now remember how I said Paradise Lost was basically its own game? Well, that's kind of the idea. Apparently, this was supposed to be the true third Postal game after the actual third game was so poorly received. In fact, they literally retconned the third game here as the Postal Dude's fever dream. They even doubled down by getting the voice actor from the third game to be a voice in the Postal Dude's head that taunts him throughout the campaign. I haven't played the third game, but I will say I kind of want to now. Like, it honestly looks pretty decent. There must be something I'm not seeing for it to get ratings as low as these. Anyway, Paradise Lost, despite me needing to play more of it to get the full picture, I immediately still thought was better than Apocalypse Weekend. You still don't have the option not to kill anybody, but this time it seems you're only required to kill bosses. There's no smashing the same zombie heads over and over here. The world is also open again. Granted, it is still the town of Paradise, but they change it up a bit by having the nuclear fallout mess with the weather in certain areas. They also added some new locations, so yeah, I think the world is serviceable here. It's definitely better than what Apocalypse Weekend had to offer, at least. As for Paradise Lost itself, you got some new weapons, you can dual-wield guns, there are references to what is somehow one of the best game adaptations of all time. And I think the Postal dude was better here than he was in the main game. Although his dickish personality there worked fine for what Postal 2 was trying to be, I can't help but feel he was a bit two-dimensional after playing this. I know that it's part of the joke that he just wants to get everything over with while not really caring if he waits in line or blows the line up, but I can't help but like this added element of him being worried for his dog Champ. It's interesting to know there's at least one thing he actually cares about. I know rescuing Champ was also a plot point in Apocalypse Weekend, but it definitely felt like he was doing it there more out of obligation. Like he was just responsible for him. Nobody else was gonna take care of him. I'm just saying, jumping into a pit of lava to save your dog is a lot more telling than just going to the pound to get him. Now, like I said, I do still need to play more of Paradise Lost to get the full picture, but hopefully what I said about it here is a good enough start. Now, the funny thing about Postal 2 is that it's actually hard for me to say it's a good game. I dare even say, this might be one of the worst games ever made. From the offensive content, to the ugly visuals, to the laughable AI, there's just so much to this game that demands you not like it. The thing is though, it kind of feels like you're not supposed to like it. At least, not in the sense that it's actually supposed to be good. This is a game that more sparks your curiosity, if anything. One where you're given free rein to look at everything shitty about it up close. Whether you find it funny for how bad it is or just find yourself in awe of its terribleness, it is truly a sight to behold. Now, for those of you concerned with me obsessing over a game like this, you're right for feeling that way. Don't let me near your kids. If you enjoyed the video, then please subscribe, leave a like, check out the channel, and share it with your friends. If you have any games you'd like me to look at, then feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Take care.